All right, we're live.
All right. So, welcome to Myriad Plots again. Episode 9, Character Death.
It's very dramatic character death or
Death
traumatic.
should be dramatic. I mean, if death isn't dramatic, that's sort of, I mean, then what's the point?
True, true.
Well, I guess that's not true. You could go with the other pole of death being comedic.
I
Um,
see that working in some games.
Yeah, I mean, what should we call it? Paranoia is like that, where you have a bunch of clones, and it's just who managed to get themselves all killed off first. I suppose I've never actually played it, so but I backed it on Kickstarter, so I may do that someday.
Someday, like many Kickstarter games.
Yes, yes. Thus far, I think I've only played one of the games I kickstarted for.
Um, Now, I don't know about you, but I have had a limited number of character deaths in my games.
Yeah, it's not too common in my games. I think I've had characters die more often than I've let player characters die in my own games that I'm running.
Gotcha. So your own characters have died.
Yes. Yeah. I think part of it is because I've played a lot of old school D&D, and characters die in D&D
Yes.
a lot.
I guess which kind of brings us to the first thing we had outlined, which was the stakes. Because in D&D, the stakes aren't very high.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, yeah. So basically, what's the downside of death? Or if a character can't die, if we decide for the purpose of the game that characters shouldn't die, what are the stakes for losing? Because there should be some downside to a situation that should kill you.
So if not death, then what?
Right. I mean, in D&D, you got death, and but like you said, the stakes are pretty low.
Yeah,
Um,
your character can come back fairly easily.
yeah, I mean, death is only a finding the appropriately high enough level priest and a certain amount of money, and you're back in the action down a level.
Or if you go with a druid and reincarnation, a very, very stupid singing boar.
Yeah, yeah, I remember the singing boar.
So I played one of my few D&D characters I played was a bard who got killed and resurrected as a boar. So it was hilarious, except for the fact that I went from having a character to having a butt of a joke, who was
Yeah,
totally useless in everything except for being the butt of a joke.
yeah. Reincarnation is generally not. I've never seen it work out that it was actually satisfactory for the person involved.
You have to kind of like plan on doing it, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. Reincarnation is pretty horrible, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it if you make it focus on the plot line and the player's game and everything else.
But if you're going to use the random chart or something of that sort, it's just not going to be good.
Yeah, so whatever the stakes are, avoid that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, okay, so there's a lot of potential stakes. Some of them we've already covered. So there's property. Coming
Right.
back from the dead costs you money, or if you to avoid death, maybe your mighty magic sword gets in the way of the that attack that would have killed you, but now you have mighty magic uh, hilt. um,
And one thing about that, the important thing is if it's the MacGuffin, if the Magic Sword is the MacGuffin, then be willing to destroy it just to prove it can be destroyed.
Mm,
Because if they have to come up with another way, that's the stake right there. You
yeah,
know? If their solution is suddenly stolen from them, then that becomes a whole new game where it actually becomes kind of panic inducing to not know how to defeat the bad guy.
yeah. Um, Another one that we've covered is sort of abilities. So maybe dying or avoiding death, reduces your experience, or maybe you lose stamina. Um, the wound didn't kill you, but it unlike the saying, that which does not kill you might actually weaken you up.
Right, like, or you could do a flaw like they have in White Wolf. It could be a loss of a limb or an eye, or it could
Yeah,
be enduring pain.
yeah, all very legitimate things that can come from brushes with death. Let's see. There's some more esoteric ones, and a lot of this comes from White Wolf actually. So there's like the concept of losing agency. So rather than dying, you lose control over your character in some way. So like with Geist, you're playing a Sin Eater who is somebody who's made a pact with an underworld spirit to come back from the dead. So obviously, if a Geist falls into a wood chipper, he's going to survive because, well, he's already come back from the dead once.
Right,
But he's not going to be the same the second time around.
right.
In game terms, he loses his morality trait of synergy, and he's less able to be an effective character.
To separate himself from the being.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a permanent loss for the character.
Right.
Um, Another,
Also, any
yeah,
story where death is permanent for most people,
hmm
something like that. If a character sees them die, or if they're known to have died, then coming back does not give them their life back.
yeah, yeah. Death has a cost. It extracts something from the character. Yeah, that would be really a really good thing to use in any game that's got some horror element to it.
I think that would be interesting to see happen more often in D&D too, because I mean, ostensibly D&D is like the high fantasy, um, story, but even in fantasy novels, death is more serious than it is in D&D.
Yeah, yeah. It would it would be interesting. You'd have to really change how people came back from the dead. Because at the moment it's just a spell and some components. But if you wanted to make it, well, there's a few. I've seen other ways of doing it in D&D like games. Um, there's in Arcana Evolved, which was Monty Cook's 3.0 version of D&D. Um, there was a resurrection spell, but it had to be done in this. There was a narrow window. You couldn't have oh, he's been dead for 6 months. We're going to bring him back. We're just going to find a higher level cleric. You need to do it within a few days of the death, and it took several days of casting the spell to bring them back. So it was a big deal. It was not an easy thing. People who died could come back if they were rich enough, had the right connections, but it would take a lot of effort.
I
Um,
just also just the idea that not most of those clerics don't exist in the world. Like there's not high enough level cleric always,
yeah,
and also that they're not always willing to do it.
yeah, yeah. You can have a lot of fun getting that into a well, the fighter's dead, but now the rogue and the wizard have to convince the high cleric to bring back their friend. But he doesn't want to because, well, the fighter's an unbeliever, so why does he care?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, but it'd be interesting to have a D&D game where death was, maybe you kept the whole ceremony and the spell sort of thing, but that there was a price, something like a middle ground between the character destruction of reincarnation and the trivial, death is a revolving doorway of raised dead.
Yeah. Something a little more serious, a little more costly.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Other games have some other interesting ways of dealing with it. Vampire has got another sort of agency sapping thing of you die, you're not really dead. You're in torpor. You know,
Yeah, you're asleep.
you're asleep. Yeah, you're just resting, and you just have to wait the weeks or possibly months, or if you're a real monster, years before you wake up again. Which is interesting. I run one game where a character got into torpor, and it really it got the rest of the characters really worried.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a game where most of the characters were mages, and one character was a vampire, or actually two characters were a vampire, but only one of them really counts for this. And some vampire hunters burst into their sanctum and beat the vampire unconscious into torpor. And they're all like, "Well, is she going to get back up?" And they're waiting, they wait the couple of weeks it takes for her to wake up again, wondering if she's going to appear, and if she's going to appear before all their social obligations involving her come up.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because it was interesting because basically their sanctum technically belonged to her.
Gotcha.
They were sort of technically working for her. It
So
was,
she wasn't around. Their entire gains as a group would come down on them.
yeah. So that was interesting. And Mummy has a similar thing. Mummy, the curse, I believe, where you can't die. Mummies just don't die. There's just like no way you're gonna kill them. But if you do kill them, they'll be out of the action for some period of time, possibly months, possibly centuries. It depends on the circumstances. So there's a lot of potential. You don't want to die, but it won't kill you.
Right. But at the same time, that can be disruptive to the game if it's not.
Yeah, yeah. They're interesting, and I think they would work really well with a game with a group that's with a one-on-one game.
Yes.
But if you have multiple players, then you have somebody sitting out.
Yes.
Which,
Especially if there's no way
yeah,
for them to be revived.
yeah, yeah. With vampire, you could potentially go find a more powerful vampire and give their blood to their torpid ally, and they'll wake up. But
Which is a
it's
replacement cost because it's a blood bond in exchange for actually being involved in the game.
right. Yeah, so it's worth considering in a game where you have death that whatever the stakes are, whatever the character stands to lose, you should try to as much as you can to avoid that stake involving the player being out of the action.
Right. Which,
Because
no, it leads to interesting, like, a
mhm,
lot of interesting avenues. I know we'll get to this later, but just in terms of if you're playing a vampire character and your character ends up a torpor longer term, to play a servant as being part of the consequence, you know?
yeah, a replacement character is definitely a possible way of handling it. Um, I did something. Well, I've done things like that before. Um, there's this one really interesting adventure called the Bane Warrens, whereas written into the adventure, there's the idea that one of the characters will get captured, and rather than have that player be out of the action, they they manage to sort of possess a random adventurer who's sort of wandering around in the city, and that adventurer comes in and is their replacement character for a while until they can rescue themselves.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was a really fun. The Bane Warrens has a lot of really cool ideas. It's basically an Uber dungeon with politics and all sorts of interesting role playing opportunities. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, so I think whatever you end up charging someone for coming back from the dead, it needs to be something that's not going to take the person out of the action, but might limit how they can interact with the world for a bit. Maybe they come back, but they've got some wound that's weakening them, or they come back and there's this creepy spirit talking in their ear the whole time, or something like that, or
Something that's going to impact not only role play, but is going to have a real like impact on the players as well.
yeah.
Not just that player, other players. They
Hmm.
should all. If someone's going to die, then everyone should be afraid. It shouldn't be like the one guy, like, oh, let's kill that guy, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, I'm currently watching season 3 of Arrow, and I've just finally caught up to the point where I don't know if it's a spoiler because I think they pushed it a lot of a major character dying, or rather, the main character dying.
The main character dying, yeah.
as
I saw that episode well before. I haven't watched season 3 yet. I've only watched parts of most of season 2. But I saw that episode, so I'm like, oh, he's going to come back.
Right, of course, it's a comic.
Yeah.
It's based on a comic book. The character's going to come back from the dead. But the episode after that deals with all the other characters dealing with the fact that he's not there.
Did they do it well?
I think they do it pretty well. There's some of the characters just sort of are in denial, and then some of the characters are very much believe this is what's going to happen. They're asking, what are we going to do next? And yeah, things fall apart, and then they come back together again.
Gotcha.
People reach a point where they say, "Oh, I can't handle this anymore. I'm turning the lights off on this, and this is over." Which was pretty dramatic in that the character literally walks out of the Arrow Cave and flicks the lights off and leaves the poor people down there in the Arrow Cave in complete blackness.
There's no more arrow cave for anyone.
Yeah, but it's okay. Things get better as,
Okay.
as they do. They may get worse again. I'm still catching up.
Speaking of death, though, that death wasn't that dramatic.
He got stabbed through the chest and thrown off a cliff.
Yeah, but it was like so like I don't know. Like when it happened, I was just like, oh, he fell. He's gonna live.
Whoa, okay, yes, he's going to come back. But come on, he's the title character. You can't kill him.
Well, it's I guess like I would have been more interested if it wasn't the mid-season finale.
Oh, if it was a season finale.
Like that would be a good season finale because it gives people a full 6 months to wonder if he's gonna be alive or not.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Yeah.
So like mid-season finale, he's gonna be alive. Come on.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All right, so let's get back to characters dying, not
Well, like it's a good point for games though too. Like if you're gonna kill somebody, like it's gotta be dramatic.
Yeah. You
It's
got
gotta be at the right time.
well, okay, so this is a debatable point. I'm with you on this, Mike. But there are, the question is when can a character die and how can they die? And I believe in doing the dramatic death, but there are people who like the whole let the dice land as they will, characters die, whenever.
Those people, I think, are sadists.
Well, I think to a certain extent they're either moving trying to get realism or or aiming for just playing the game. I'm trying to think how to say this in a gentle way of playing the game as it is set out.
I can see that there is a certain level of it becomes a little bit more serious when when you know the person on the other end of the table is not going to pull any punches. Where if the dice land the way they do,
Yeah,
you're gonna die. I can understand that.
yeah.
But
Most of my character deaths have been under people like that.
if you have like a battle going on and your
Hmm.
player characters kill like let's say 85% of the guys and
Hmm.
they're almost dead, and you're just like, I'm gonna keep on rolling, not have these guys run away, and the player dies. That's kind of on you too.
Yeah, I mean it is a different play style. I feel like if you're going to play in a game like that with a GM like that or a group like that, you're probably going to be a little less attached to your character. I feel as just sort of a natural consequence
Yeah.
because yeah, I mean, for example, here's I play with a group. I played a half orc, basically a half orc samurai. Philosophically, he was a samurai or a Ronin, really. His whole family had served this noble lord for generations, and then the lord got killed off, and his family had failed to save him, and so now he felt like his family was dishonored, and he needed to like rectify things. Kill the rival lord who had wiped out the family he served. And this was all sort of set out. We were exploring that, and then we got into this big combat, and uh, this spellcaster had created this mist and was sending monsters out at us from out of it. And I went in to fight him, and everyone else moved out of the mist, and I got knocked unconscious. And then my character got his throat slit in the mist. And so my next character did not have as intricate a backstory.
I imagine
In
not.
fact, my next character is Xavier, the halfling kaboom wizard.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying, but like, is a coup de grace worth it to the game?
Yeah, I think a coup de grace is almost never worth it. I mean, I can see doing it in a case that's dramatic. Like if you're facing off against your sworn mortal enemy and they get the drop on you, I think there it's fine if they if they decide, all right, we're going to end this conflict and I'm going to kill you,
Right.
because at least you're getting killed by the person you're locked in mortal conflict with.
Right. You're not being killed by some guy.
Right.
Like imagine the effect on the story if Buffy was killed by like Monster of the Week number 8.
Yes. Yeah.
You know? It
Mhm.
just doesn't no matter how like even if you play that way, right? It doesn't help the game along because then it becomes just a game of tactics. There's nothing else to it.
Yeah. But I mean, for some people, that's what they want out of it, out of the game.
Yeah, not me.
Like I said, I agree with you, but
Yeah.
I can see their point.
I mean,
Yeah.
I see their point if that's the game they want to play. I just don't really see it necessarily being sustainable.
Well, I mean, it's sustainable, but not for a particular character, or at least not generally for a particular character.
Okay.
I mean, in this case, you're seeing it's more akin to the wargaming roots of the game or a board game. You enjoy playing the
Right.
game, examining the tactics of trying to defeat the latest challenge, but you're less involved in a story.
That works for a game like D&D though, like a miniatures game that has miniatures and has that aspect to it. But if we're
Yeah,
talking like almost any other system,
yeah. As you move away from D&D, which to be fair, most people are playing D&D.
yes. And I have no problem with D&D. I actually don't think I've played enough D&D. I'd like to play more. Um, I just like the texture of fantasy stories, and I like the combat in certain amounts. Um, I just don't know that even serves my desire for a fantasy story. I'm
Mhm.
okay with character death, but to have the character die like against a henchman is sort of. I mean, I guess I can see the point to it at times, but I still feel like people need to be somewhat forewarned that's going to be the case. You know
Yeah.
that it's got like from the get go. I feel like as a player, I'd want to know your character can die at any time.
Hmm.
Don't expect them to live if you lose in combat.
Yeah. Yeah. Having these things set out at the beginning of the game is crucial. I think just for keeping everyone satisfied.
Yeah, because even then, I've even designed a character that's still a good quality role playing character, but I may give them one or two less dimensions, or I won't make certain plans for their future.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
my goals will become a lot more short term.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of the trade-off if you're going to go that route of you know arbitrary death. That your players, if they're going to be inclined, they're going to be rewarded for short-term decisions more than long-term ones.
Right.
So let's see. Let's what do we got? I think we've covered how hard it is to die, and we've talked a bunch about coming back. Um, so I guess how do we deal with characters who die and do not come back?
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean it happens, even in D&D. There are cases where the characters they die and the means to bring them back is just not available. And I don't know. I've seen people do sort of like spend a few moments in doing sort of a funeral scene, or at least bargaining for a cheap grave.
Yeah.
Um,
As
did
a
you?
player, I feel like I would want to do something for a character. There's a couple times in your mage game where either Sarah's character or Colt could have died,
Oh yeah, it
and it
could
was
have.
like we both knew it, and I think at those points it would have been cheap if we didn't have the characters reflect and there's a moment for the character. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And even as a player, I feel like that would have really changed the dynamic of the characters. So that would have been somehow, and that's one of the hardest things is like when it does change the dynamic of the characters, you have to somehow get a new character in there somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll cover that in a sec.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
needs to be a moment. There needs to be a moment of reflection somehow in the game.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it is a common thing. I mean, even thinking back on all the times that's happened in D&D for me, I think all the players usually, there's a moment where like, oh wait, did he just die?
Yeah.
And everyone's got to like stop and think about, oh, things have changed.
Yes.
Like,
Um, that's also something when we played your D&D game way back when. That was also the case then. There was a moment where it's like, whoa, wait, hold on a second.
yeah, yeah, because I think almost all of the deaths in that game happened like mid adventure.
Yeah, and that happened very much with the roll of the dice. You know.
Yeah, I was playing very much with the roll of the dice, and I think I killed all of your characters at one point or another in
Yeah.
that game. Um, I think you died the most epic death.
The dragon breath.
It wasn't Dragon Breath. It was a half demon dragon. He destroyed you. You were consumed by unholy flames. It
Oh,
would give
that's
you
right.
back.
And I rolled a one.
That was the only way you could fail that.
Yeah, I had an almost guaranteed win on that roll. I think I had to roll a one or a two.
Yeah,
I rolled a one.
yeah.
And
I
I
think
think the best part about it was I was so cocky beforehand. It's like I'm not gonna fail this.
yeah. I think they were all fairly epic deaths. Um, let's see. Oh, except for the one for Alec,
It
which
was an epic death. Don't let him kill you. It was that entire adventure up to that point was fairly like that whole scene was epic. You know,
I did kill his character in his sleep.
he deserved it.
I mean,
No,
on the
but
plus side,
I
he
mean,
probably got killed by the greatest assassin in that game.
it was pretty rough though. He was so pissed off.
Yes, yeah, he was pretty pissed off. He was dead for like 5 minutes.
Exactly. My
In
character
in
could cast
in
resurrection.
game time, he was dead for like 5 minutes.
Literally, it was only long enough for me to get back to his room.
Yes.
So it's like that's a good example of death not being permanent, death being something that can kind of just, but it lingers still, even though that death was not a permanent death. We still are talking about it 10 years later because he gets so worked up over it.
Yeah. 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 It's. I mean, I can understand. Like, I still am a little bit bitter about a couple of my characters' deaths.
But did
Um,
they come back?
no, neither of them came back. There was the samurai who I mentioned who got his throat slit in the mist while all his friends were outside.
Yeah, I can tell that was bothering you a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And then there was my Apocalypse World character, Spectre, who was hung from the neck until dead by the other player characters.
Yeah, player character, like I guess player killing is a whole nother topic. I think though.
Yeah, I think so. I think that I don't even know what to say about it yet, but that is a different topic. That is another topic.
Yeah, it's a whole other topic. I don't even know what I want to do it, but it's that one.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've always thought about having sort of the epic send off in terms of if a character's going to die, like especially if you got dramatic, if you've set out that you're going to do dramatic deaths. Um, Doing something like that, or like a final, last gasping speech, I've always thought would be a cool idea, but I've never actually done it.
Oh man, I like really thought Colt was gonna die there a few times.
Well, I mean, when you faced off against the antediluvian, I wasn't sure if you were going to make it.
Yeah, no, no, that was one of those times. That was one of those times. But I always
But
thought like Colt would probably not have a speech. Colt would probably have like 3 or 4 words.
mm,
You know,
mm,
I think that depends on the character. I think that needs that to some degree has to be up to the player. If they're given the
yeah,
opportunity to say something, what do they say?
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it totally be the player's decision is what the character did, but I would totally let them have that final action.
Yeah, because even if it get blown up, you have enough time to at least say something. You know.
Yeah,
Like think about the same death for Dominic if it wasn't temporary.
yeah. Oh gosh. I guess probably, I mean, just to sort of outline how that scene ran for our viewers, you guys were descending down a tower linking two levels of hell when this half demon dragon caught up to you. I mean, it's basically the Balrog scene at that point.
Yeah,
It's fly fools, except not fly because it's a flying dragon. And, you want to get it's got one up on you on there.
yeah, it's already flying, so we're screwed there.
Yeah,
But
but yeah.
it was a good scene though because it was just like this thing was huge. We were small, you know.
Hmm.
It was holy versus unholy, and my character was a holy character, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. You were super holy.
So like almost all of my gear was holied out, like had holy on it. So it was just
Yeah.
like an interesting. It was an interesting moment in gameplay, and it was a serious. Even though it was a temporary death for my character, it was still serious because it was him like standing before his god after failing.
Hmm.
It was like a thing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
You've done some sort of send off, or at least moments of epicness for character deaths, at least with Chuck's characters.
yeah, well, Chuck when he gets bored tends to be suicidal. Uh,
Right.
so his characters often do things which are utterly insane. Uh, so the when he was trying to when he led the drowned god super creature out of the water and onto the beach in the Rockaways, and then drove a bike motorcycle into a gas station as it caught up with him, and somehow managed to survive that dive roll. Uh, that was a setup which was perfect for him to get off, to go away on. I've done that a
Hmm.
couple times. I ended up my Iron Heroes game most recently with some pretty crazy character death because it died. The characters died. They were in a temple. They were there trying to find um, a magical container filled with god stuff,
Right.
and they knew that if it fell into the wrong hands, it could basically just be used as like a nuclear weapon if it was struck with a certain weapon. And but this weapon was also the key to like getting it out. and one of the player characters had betrayed the others. Chuck's character betrayed the others, and they handed him the weapon, and then he did it. He just, drove the blade into the god stuff, and that caused the chain reaction, like a nuclear bomb. And so, essentially, the Chuck killed the other player characters.
Yeah. Again, we will have to return to this subject of player characters killing each other.
Player characters killing each other, yeah. But it was a moment though for the others, which was frustrating, but also kind of epic because they died like in such a grand fashion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, we had. Oh gosh, I'm just thinking back. We had a supers game that we did where several characters died. Some of them not so epic. Some of them kind of epic. Um, Essentially, we were facing off against a foe who was sort of the siler of the world. He stole and he had like manipulated our destiny so that we we would become more powerful superheroes, so that he could steal our powers later on.
yeah.
So one of the characters had the ability to time travel, and so we had just defeated the villain and realized that he had set a contingency plan that would destroy the entire planet. Uh, and so the time traveler jumped back in time before we started the fight, before anything had happened, to confront the villain, to stop him then, and save the world. And he arrives, and the villain's like, "Oh yes, I've been looking forward to you arriving," and kills him.
Ooh, that's harsh.
Yeah, yeah. But I was prepared for this sort of game. That was the game where I played the Atomic Man, who by this point wanted to destroy the world himself. So it was all good for him.
You won that game, Jay. You won that game.
I survived too.
um, I think we should actually leave replacement characters for another show.
All right. Yeah, there's a
That's
lot to
pretty.
talk
It's a lot to
because
talk
I
about.
mean that covers everything from if a character dies to if you get new players.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because that's those are both kind of similar experiences.
Yeah, yeah,
But the epic send off is I think is a must. In-game funerals I think make sense. Um, the death speech I think makes sense, and I really think that using it to set the tone for the next phase of the game is important. Not just
yeah.
to let it be a one-off like, oh, this story is so sad, the character died. Oh, now let's move on. But having it something that comes up, like family members of a dead player character come into the story at some point.
Right. Yeah, that would be yeah. That would be all the connections that were left behind from that character have to continue to reverberate down through the story.
Right, right. And I think it's important if you have multiple characters die that it happens with all of them.
Yeah, yeah. Fun, especially in something where a group has sort of a group uh, a home base like Sanctum or Lair or whatever, where lingering bits of their like their room is still there, and whatever crazy weird experiment they were working on or magic item they never quite identified is still lying there waiting.
Still hanging out, yeah.
Yeah. Or that package that arrives, 2 weeks later that they had ordered online.
Yeah. Take a gift for another player character for their birthday. Punch them in the heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that about says it. Punch him in the heart.
Yeah. Death should matter. It's
That's
painful.
matter. Because let's be honest, it matters a lot in real life. You know, like I think we
Yeah.
can cheapen the experience of grief even in games to some extent because although it's an escape, it's also an exploration of like the things that make us us. And grief is hard.
Yeah.
And reading how some people react to character death online,
Yeah.
I feel like people really go through grief for their characters sometimes.
Yeah. Mhm. All right. And we leave you with that somber thought.
Well, good night, everyone. Thanks
Next
for
time.
listening.
Yep. Good night.